This is the Good Fire Podcast. Stories of Indigenous fire stewardship, cultural empowerment, and environmental integrity. Hey everybody, welcome to Good Fire. My name is Matthew Kristoff.
And I'm Amy Cardinal Christianson, and we're here to share stories of Indigenous fire stewardship.
So over the next few episodes, we're going to be talking with Indigenous researchers and Indigenous fire practitioners about what they're doing and how they're trying to get Indigenous burning back on the land.
So this podcast is sponsored by the Canadian Partnership for Wildland Fire Science, with support from the California Indian Water Commission and the Fire Sticks Alliance Indigenous Corporation. On this episode, we're going to talk to Tim Kanoa and Trent Nelson, who are Indigenous men who both work for the state of Victoria.
We discuss strides in Indigenous fire management and how we can start to incorporate the Australian model elsewhere in the world. So for this one, we're actually going to jump straight into the conversation where Trent and Tim were talking about the Australian Indigenous people's flag. And we just thought it set a good tone for the conversation. And about 5 minutes in, we're going to get into talking about cultural burning. Here we go.
Our nation's flag, so we've got the predominant Australian flag, but under that, we've got the Aboriginal flag as our people, but so it's black and red, and then in the middle's a yellow circle, yellow dot. So the black represents the people, the red represents Mother Earth and the blood, and then the sun, the yellows represents the sun, giving us life and giving us dreaming.
And it was created.
Cool,
the flag was created back in 1975, I think it was, Trent.
I think so, yeah.
By Thomas Harold, an Aboriginal fella from Queensland, and it was about our identity on a national scale, and ultimately become the symbol that led a lot of our protests, marches, etc. When we took to the streets back in the 70s and 80s. And it's to the point now where, I mean, it's a symbol, right? For our mob, it's a thing that we connect to collectively as a nation, as a nation of Aboriginal peoples. But it's also a political issue too, because we've had Olympians like Kathy Freeman, who won gold in the Olympics. She carried both the Aboriginal and Australian flags. She got criticised for it. We had a fellow by the name of Damien Hooper, who's a boxer. Right. He took the Aboriginal flag into the ring when he was at the Olympics. He got criticised for it. And it's a political thing. You know, if people wear the Aboriginal flag, it seems as a political thing as opposed to something that is an identity for us, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. So they're seeing it as like, you don't like Australia,
like
you just want, it's like that's unfortunate that they see it that way.
The cool thing though about your flag, I think, is that all your different mobs have come under it. Like in Canada, like with our nations, none of us can agree on anything like that. We just
that still
fight
happens,
amongst
Amy.
each other.
Over here, we can't agree on stuff,
Yeah.
but it's all good. At least we agree on that flag. So
at least you got a flag.
Yeah,
it's not
and
the flag colours too, Trent? Like a lot of people's wear the beads, yellow, black, and red.
That's it. It's
the
flag colour, you know. Yeah, everywhere. You know, it's something too that I think I noticed. Like there was a long period of time where people weren't really wearing it proud, like, you know. But now, you know, you go anywhere, march, you go to footy, where it is, and people are wearing it proud on their jumpers, their hoodies, their caps, t-shirts, little babies, you know. And it's just, they're proud of it more now, I reckon.
Tim, have you been playing your drum?
Yeah, I have.
Good.
It's so
good
cool.
Boy.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. No problem at all.
It's in my room with all my artifacts and everything else that I have.
Oh, sweet. That's good. No, I just wanted to make sure that you weren't just like, you know, some people just will hang it on the wall and not touch it.
It says you can't hang it. I would never hang it. This thing is to be played. I go out here I live on an acreage out here. I go out and drum it hard, and all the neighbours run off scared.
You're that big
Sweet.
bonfire, bud, eh?
They think, what's going on here? I thought we were dealing with Aboriginal people.
They're all confused.
Yeah.
Not over the other side of the sea.
Yeah. Anyways, we should probably
We'll get started.
talk about burning. But yeah.
I was thinking about what you guys were saying about the flag, though. I might we'll see
Yeah,
how
we
that
could
fits
maybe
in.
put
We
that
could probably
in
squeak that
somewhere.
in there. It's been recording the whole time.
So Trent, we'll go with you first if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, no worries, Amy. Hello, everybody. So, yeah, my name's Trent Nelson. I'm a Yorta Yorta Djadjarung man, Yorta Yorta on my grandmother's side and Djadjarung on my grandfather's side. Based here in Victoria, near central Victoria, which is a place called Bendigo. And I work within the Parks agency, doing land management, but I'm also a chairperson at the Djadjarung Clans Aboriginal Corporation as well. So, yeah, good to be here.
Awesome.
Sweet. And Tim?
Yeah, g'day everyone. My name's Tim Kanoa. On my grandmother's side, I'm a Kermara man of the Gunditjmara Nation, which is southwest Victoria, here in Victoria. And on my grandfather's side, I'm Bunny Chiwaja, which is up in West Arnhem Land at the top of Australia. My daytime job, I work for the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, ultimately making sure that we get both, traditional owners' rightful place in the business of that department, but also I'm on the board of Gunditjmara, which is the corporation responsible for native title rights down in Gunditjmara country.
Sweet. Well, thanks for coming on, you guys, with us today.
Yeah, this is exciting for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, when I met
Thanks
you
for having
guys,
us.
it was at that, yeah. Well, remember when we met at that conference in New Zealand, the Fire Continuum
Yeah.
conference? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember when we were the only Indigenous people at the conference. So
Yeah,
we
I
became
know.
kind of fast friends with our interest in cultural burning. So, I mean, I wanted to have you guys on just because I know that you're both super passionate about this topic and super involved in what burning basically means to you and your community. So, yeah, if we could just kick off, Trent, if you just want to talk a little bit about your mob and how you guys burn there, and yeah, just kind of your traditional practices around it.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. So I suppose first for it, I guess I've got to pay respect to our ancestors, our old people that continued this custom on that we were talking about today, fire. And for my mob, for Djadjarung people, we call it Jandak We, which means country fire. So we recreated and brought fire back to our landscape about 3 years ago. Through that, I suppose it became, always been a passion of myself growing up with my father. My father, he had that knowledge and that skill. Didn't do it as much, but he, showed me techniques, and there are things today that we've created. And my cousin Mick Burke, he works as a burn planner in Delp that Tim works for. So basically what we're doing in government, we're actually trying to set policy and procedure around traditional owners here in Victoria to burn on country. So for Djadjarung people, we have areas out on country. We have joint management in our area with Parks Victoria. So that means we've got parcels of native title land that are in our title, Aboriginal title. So they're areas that we can go out and we can burn. But what we do, we actually go through the burn fire operations plan process, basically. So we put our burns on the same as the prescribed fire burns, I guess you would call them. They sit side by side, but one's cultural burn for us for whatever reason we want, and the other burns are just for normal fuel management and asset protection. So for us, we've been doing it for 3 years now, and what we started off with was 2 burns, and we're up now to about 28 burns on those FOP plans.
Sweet.
So, yeah.
So how long, you said you've been doing it for 3 years now. How long has it been since you were able to do that freely?
Probably 175 years. That was when burning sort of stopped on my grandfather's area. They stopped burning.
And that was based on colonialization, I suppose.
Exactly right. So it was in our area in Central Victoria. We basically had we're known Central Victoria for the gold rush that happened in the late 1700s. So gold was a big impact on our people, driving our people off their traditional lands, pushing them into settlements across Victoria. But to the strive and the strength, I suppose, of my ancestors, our people survived today, and we're moving back on country and living on country, and picking up those practices like that flame that them old people left behind, when they stopped burning, and we're reigniting that flame and carrying it across our country again. So,
yeah, Trent, I just want to ask about, lots of times when I'm working with people or agencies to bring fire back, they say, oh, it's a practice you guys did a long time ago and it's not applicable to today. So I'm just wondering, what your experience is with that, considering, you hadn't used fire in 175 years. Did you run into that too?
Oh, look, it's a common thing, I think, Amy. We run across it every day with new people that have their own, I suppose, agendas and their own opinions around fire management as a land management tool. The fact is we actually have the proof out there. When we burn, we can see the difference in the landscape, what happens. For 170 plus years, our land, especially in our country here, it's been degraded. It's been turned over for mining. We haven't had fire back in the landscape our way, so we haven't had cool burning techniques. So what's happened is it's thrown all of the ecosystem and everything, off on a tangent that basically we're trying to bring back and slowly fix some of these areas and repair them back to what they were. We're always getting that pushback from government, and not so much, it's generally the people on the ground that we get pushback from in certain roles. But that comes back to education as well. We just take them out, we educate them, and we go, look, this is what our old people did, and we can show them, we can prove, it's all about the proof. We can actually show them on the ground what's happening on the ground with what plants are coming back and microorganisms in the soil that are actually activating themselves. So
it sounds like it's a similar situation to what happened, at least here in Canada, from my understanding, is, close to a couple centuries ago, Indigenous people weren't allowed to do their cultural burning practices. And as a result of that, in tandem with fire suppression, we have a total changeover of kind of ecosystems from this mosaic of treed and plains landscape with shrub and all kinds of diversity and habitat and forest structure to something that is, at least now, like here in Alberta, here in Canada, we have just a carpet of trees everywhere now, right? So it's changed the fire mosaic and it's changed the forest landscape, and it sounds like we're only just now, at least here as a Western culture, trying to figure it out that that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So it sounds like do you guys have a similar situation? Like have you seen a change in the forest structure because of the lack of Indigenous burning that's been going on?
Oh yeah, most definitely. It's we've got more stems per hectare in certain areas. We've got areas that basically it's affecting the wildlife and the vegetation. So we obviously, kangaroos, we have here as a native animal. They will only eat in certain areas when the grass is right and it's the right type of grass. They won't eat just because it's grass. So what's happening in the landscape here is that we've got areas that basically used to be open grasslands for kangaroos to feed at certain times of the year. what's happening is they're getting pushed out into residential areas because there's no food in those areas, and what's happening is causing car accidents and high populations of kangaroos. So even our hunting practices as well come into fire. It's not just about burning country; it's about hunting and the right time to hunt. And the only way we can hunt in the right times is when that we know where the kangaroos and the emus and the actual wildlife are at certain times of the year. And that basically, when that's not there, it's that circle. It's taking a piece out of that circle. It's not working positively in the landscape. And that's what's happened here in this country, especially with the gold mining. Gold mining's, in this country, it's basically, we call it upside down country, because all of our old people's, their story, their artifacts that they've left behind, they've basically been turned upside down. So when we go to find them, we've got to dig down in the soil to find them again, and look after them. So,
yeah, interesting. It's the coolest thing to me about cultural burning too is, like, even as you go from continent to continent, like, the objective is similar, right? That we burned for cultural subsistence. But we burn for deers, they burn for kangaroos down there, right? different of a world. But Tim, let's hop over to you now, and just kind of the same opening question there that I had for Trent. If you could just talk a bit about fire and what it means to your mob as well.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, we're Karamara people, or Gunishmara people, so Karamara of the Gunishmara Nation, but essentially our landscape was created by Budgebim, which was Mount Eccles, a volcano, and that erupted, and ultimately the lava flow went some 50 km inland all the way to the sea, and all of our landscape is lava flow, and lava stones have been left behind, and so our ancestors ultimately had used those lava stones to manipulate waterways, create stone agricultural systems, fish traps, eel traps, etc. As well as that, we utilised the stone to create what we'd say permanent residency, and ultimately, like every other tribal group here in the state of Victoria, shattered the myth of nomadic Aboriginal people, because we had such permanent residencies. We have about 1,000, I think, registered stone huts. So that's a bit of an idea on the landscape. But when it comes to fire, I sat down and I spoke with my uncle yesterday. Similar to the Jar Jar Warang and Trent's mob, we've been using this since, one of the terms I heard when I was over in the States, we've been using fire since time immemorial, and ultimately putting fire in the landscape for many different reasons, which is over time, as you know, when the world has evolved, so does our culture. I mean, ultimately, if we didn't evolve as a culture, we wouldn't be the longest living culture in the world. So fire for us nowadays is a number of different things. I mean, we call it wing it's WEEN, wing, Karawan wing, and it's connected to our dreaming stories, the way in which the fire come about. But the way we used it is ultimately firstly to protect the community, for safety and for obviously fuel management, but not those large scale fuel managements. You used it for cultural purposes. We used it for land and resource management. When I say we, I mean when we use it now for these purposes. We use it for protection of habitat trees. We're focused on rejuvenation of traditional plants, similar to Trent and every other mob that I've spoken to about fire. In particular, for us, it's about the punyat plant, which is a water-based reed plant that we harvested, and our women would weave our eel traps in our baskets. So fire would obviously rejuvenate that. We use it to clear certain plants so that we can provide access to our agricultural system now, and our fish traps, and obviously we can visualize and see them and give our young people the opportunity to see these ancient systems that our ancestors had created. And we also, kind of focus on it from a weed and pest control when you talk about the landscape prior to colonization. And I guess nowadays, the conversation we are having earlier about, getting kangaroo, etc. back, well, we need to kind of control the weeds and the pests and all these other things that ultimately shift away the biodiversity and other things that we require on our land to survive. Um,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, no, really interesting. So yeah, I think you talked there but a bit about, it's one of my favorite myths over here too, that we were indigenous people were so nomadic, that we just kind of you know, carried it, picked up our stuff and like went wherever the wind took us.
yeah,
Which I mean, yeah, is not actual reality of what went
and
on.
that's
Like
what we
here,
say. That's
yeah.
what we say. We shatter the. I mean, even now, it's like the hunter-gatherer
Hmm.
mentality, and nomadic Aboriginal peoples just roam the land aimlessly. And ultimately, when you go to our landscapes, of our landscapes, you will see that we lived here on a permanent basis, and we had borders. And I mean, in the state of Victoria, we have 38 Aboriginal languages alone in the state of Victoria, and so we spoke a different language between tribal groups. And one time I was in Central Australia, and we were up there for a Yiparinya festival, cultural festival, and the tribe that was living next to us or camping next to us for that day, um, both the men and women separated at night time, and each of those groups had their own language, and none of them could understand it. So that was in the same tribe. So you can understand
Wow.
how complex that was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, up here too, like I'm always trying to talk about how our nations had our territories, right? So in like for Cree people, we had, summer and winter camps. But I mean, yeah, it's not like, we would suddenly, go over to Quebec or like to the east, to go hunting and then come back, right?
Yeah.
Like it was a pretty tight range. So, and I think that that's too why burning is so interesting. So here in Canada, our nations, even though some of them are close together, we have such different reasons for burning, different objectives. So I'm just wondering for you guys there, like, do you guys have similarities between your mobs or differences too?
Yeah. I think I mean, look, with my grandmother's country, Yorta country, it's along. It basically sits along the Murray River, which is one of the largest rivers in Australia. Um, it borders Victoria to New South Wales, two states. But all of along that stretch of my grandmother's country is all river red gum, so really large trees, really big um, open areas. The landscape of my grandfather's country is all ironbark country with a bit of whipstick mallee. So it's very diverse, very rocky. So I've got two different countries, I suppose, and runs through my bloodlines that, when we burn, we're burning different reasons. So within, 50 to 100 Ks of each other, we've got different techniques and different styles of burning and why we burn due to the vegetation, really, and the actual wildlife that we have there. So I know predominantly here on my grandfather's country, like emus, we haven't had emus here for over, close to 70 plus years. So that's the one main reason why we're burning now is to try and encourage them emus to come back in to our country, because that vegetation has been non-existent for a long time. So that's another reason people think. I think when it comes to fire, they have that one tunnel vision that it's basically for burning the fuel in the landscape to stop wildfire. Over here, our country is very hot, very dry. Um, wildfire was used as a technique with our people, but at the same time through the year, we burnt certain areas for hunting, but we knew the wildfire was coming, and we acknowledged that, and we celebrated that through our ceremonies, and they're things that I think today we live in a different landscape, different world, unfortunately, and asset protection is probably the main thing that we need to look for, I suppose, in terms of risk and property and human life, which we know that, but it doesn't mean it takes away from our cultural integrity on the country and having our right to burn on our traditional lands, which is why I push that very importantly with my department and even with Tim's support as well in government with DELP, we do that because it's very important to basically all we need is our mob and our neighbours to just drop that flame for the first time, and that's what encourages them people. I know it's happened with our mob. We've had mob that have never burnt before. We've had elders that have never burnt before because of what happened with colonisation and where they've grown up, and they haven't had the chance to actually grow up on country. So having them out and actually having them lighting that flame and carrying that flame, it's serving another purpose now. It's actually coming back into that family kinship laws and bringing back our ceremonies. So it's not just about burning the landscape. It's about healing our people as well. So.
Yeah, Tim, do you have anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I think the points Trent was making was fairly similar to us a bit. I mean, but our landscapes are completely different. We primarily are focused on a wetland, on wetlands, and as I talked about, the agricultural systems that we've had, and we've got, and it's all lava flow, rocky country. So burning for us is difficult across that terrain because one, there's a lot of cave systems underneath, and the fire can go underground and go undetected for some time, so that's a bit of a tricky one to manage. But I think in terms of that rights stuff that Trent was touching on, it's important to know that here in Australia, we have several acts that protect the rights of traditional owners or Aboriginal peoples across the country. I think the first one we have is called the Native Title Act. And ultimately, the Native Title Act was introduced in 1993. Essentially, that provided us with the processes to go through the federal court to recognise a set of rights and interests over land and waters where Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people, because the Torres Strait Islander mobs are those up top Queensland on the islands, they're the ones who actually got native title to come about because of Kuki Mabo, Eddie Mabo. Essentially, it's ensuring that we have the rights over those land and waters to practicing to continue our practices under our traditional laws. So that's native title, and this is primarily since sovereignty. When we're talking about sovereignty, we mean the British colonialist sovereignty. So in terms of being able to get native title, though, it's a tough process. I mean, our people, we have native title determination, but our people took 15, 16 years in the federal court process to be given out, will be determined as a native, recognised under native title. But there are two questions that the court will ask in this space, and the first one is to understand traditional laws and customs of the groups of Indigenous people claiming native title. Are their rights and interests to the claim area based on their traditional connection to the area? And also, if the connection under traditional law and custom is found, the courts ask the next question: has this connection been either entirely or partially extinguished by specific government action, for example, selling the area of the claimed land? So what that means, essentially, right, is our mob, Gunditjmara people, have been given native title determination over 140,000 hectares of land, which in that land there's obviously freehold title, privately owned land, etc., etc., etc. There's also a large part of it is Crown land. So we have the native title rights over that Crown land. But essentially, it's about the traditional practices, So fire may well be the traditional practices in that space. But we actively manage around 3,000 hectares of land, which is our freehold title. So if you think about it in that context, what we've got is Crown land and the protection of our rights, our native title rights to be able to go in, hunt, gather, cultural practice, but obviously managed by the Crown, managed by the government. And then we've got our freehold title, which not all traditional owner groups have. Like, we're lucky that we have our own properties, our own freehold title to be able to, exert our rights when we want to on that space, and that's what we do.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, it's interesting to me when you talk about like that you have titles, so you're technically supposed to be allowed, but you're still managed by the government, by those kind of colonial oversight.
So that's on Crown land in particular. So
okay, yep.
when we have native title, you're absolutely right. So if we want to go and burn on Crown land, then we need to go through the processes like Trent and the mob have done on his country. We'd need to go through the processes and working in partnership with the government to be able to do that. But on the 3,000 hectares of land, well, ultimately we can do that. But obviously, you've got to do it within the law as well. But we have more ability to burn in the way in which we wanted to.
Yeah, I think the important thing for people that aren't of indigenous descent or are not part of this culture is to recognize that there's benefits to other societies as well, right? The benefits not just towards the indigenous culture itself, it's also towards like environmental integrity, and there's all kinds of things going on there as well. So like even people that aren't a part of indigenous cultures should be thinking about this and being aware that this is a good thing and should be happening on the landscape, regardless of whether or not you're tied into the cultural aspect of it or not.
Yeah, and I think Trent and I have spoken at length about, and Tim too, about that emotional connection that we have to fire. So it's like Trent just said before too, like it's healing the land through using fire, but it's also healing ourselves. So what we talked about in the first podcast, where it's getting people back on the land to reestablish our health, our connection, and how our health is so tied to what the land is. So I don't know, do you guys want to, I was going to say, like, I remember at that conference, Trent, you were talking about your frustration with it was that, it was a fire management conference, but there was no real emotion. Like, it was just like, people doing their day job. Whereas for us as Indigenous people, fire is, it's emotional. I don't know how else to say it. Yeah.
What's the thing? The culture, the deep cultural aspect, I think is something that people don't understand, including myself. It's totally outside of my realm. To me, fire was, I did wildfire firefighting for a few years before I started my degree. And it was just this fun job where I got to do cool stuff. Right. And there wasn't a cultural deep connection with that, which I find fascinating.
Yeah. I think that's, so what I know in the last few years, what we've tried to, I know personally with us, is trying to have people in the departments that they have fire roles in whatever management system they sit. It's trying to have them understand what our basically our visions for the future and visions for our people are. What we've done is actually we've created a country plan, our people. So basically, that country plan, that's a document that we give to all government agencies that actually shares our vision in what we want for our people and for our future generations, moving forward into the future. And we have that dated to 2034, basically, so people can pick that document up and understand a little bit about us instead of us having to go out to every individual and sit down and talk to them and have a yarn with them. It's one of those things, actually, Amy. Yeah, it was going to that conference in Missoula. I was amazed. Had my own, I guess, before I was going, I had my own impressions of having a lot of traditional owners over there, up there talking, and I was really impressed with the ceremony and the introduction there. By them old people that at the start of the conference, and I thought that was really important, and that was something I hadn't actually seen for my whole trip actually over in the US. That was sort of good to see that, and brought me back home again, and then as the conference went on, it wasn't until I caught up with you, it was lacking that after a while, because it was sort of a lot of there was no traditional owners up there talking, and I'm thinking, this is about fire, this is about the landscape, this is about the people, and it was good to actually, to connect with you, Amy, and to hear your story, because, I felt for that week it was sort of it was just about me telling my story, but I wanted to hear that story of that country over there as well, because that's important. And hopefully, I think Amy, I definitely know what we do here. We'll always support yourself and others over there trying to push that in any way that it's important of traditional owners getting up and having their say of country and how it's managed, because for a long time here, our people they were in the shadows, they were in the dark. They were too afraid to step out, and be heard. And it's something that with this fire, with Junduk-Wee, especially in our country, it's actually brought people together that have had feuds, had issues with each other, and have actually connected again and come back out on country. And that just doesn't go for our mob, it goes for our neighbours, our other clan groups around us, bringing them back together and going out and burning country, because it's a positive tool in any sense. It's not just about burning country. So,
totally.
Yeah,
do you guys want to maybe speak to, because you guys keep talking about what was lost and kind of healing the community and that kind of stuff. Do you want to speak for those that are uninitiated? What exactly was lost? Like, what do you think the community, how has it suffered from not being able to do these practices?
I think firstly, I would say nothing's lost. We've been disrupted, yes, in terms of being able to live as a society in the way in which we want to, as Aboriginal peoples or as Keremara or Kunishmara people, because in particular, when it comes to fire, certainly some knowledge was lost. But I spoke to my uncle yesterday, and I said, look, what do you think? How long is it going to take us to get all that knowledge, to get all the things that we need and the elements that we need to be able to use fire in the way in which we want to? And he simply just said, we've already got it. We've already got the knowledge. We've already got everything we need. The one thing that is missing for us is our confidence to be able to do it.
Interesting, yeah.
And I think that resonates because obviously when you've been a group of people that have been oppressed for some 230 years, when I say oppressed, I mean oppressed so that we can't practice our culture, we can't talk our language, we can't live our way of life, then obviously that does a lot with your confidence. And so every time I would talk to an uncle or an elder in particular, they're always saying, no, it's not lost. It's not lost. It's there. We just got to do it. We just got to make it happen. And making it happen, obviously that's the trick. Yeah, one of it's about getting our young people back on the landscape. It's about getting our elders back into the landscape, because ultimately, an uncle who was an elder to me would obviously say to him, well, his elders are the ones who need to express and make the decisions on the way in which the land is managed. So we need to get all that kind of cultural governance back into play as well as being able to influence and bring the general community along with us. I mean, the conversation having earlier was around, how do we get that general community to understand? It's going to be a tough one, because I think the general community struggle to understand fire generally. So what I mean by that, I mean the science behind it, the need for it, the need for plan burning, etc., etc., etc. And so I think, we've got to come up with a good balance of scientific practice. We've got to come up with a good balance of cultural understanding and knowledge, etc. And the best way to do it is have a strong partnership with one another and try and move forward in that way.
Yeah, great point.
For sure.
I think too about that. I love your point about the loss of knowledge, because I think that's often what I say over here. Because I think we've probably in Canada lost 95 to 98% of cultural burning knowledge. But what I think is really cool that you guys are doing over there too is, the thing I always argue with Indigenous knowledge is that, we're still Indigenous people and can create knowledge today. And like the fact too, like for most of us, we've lost, like, because for fire it like incorporates ceremony. So usually we had like a ceremony or songs before a fire, during a fire, after, right? That was an important part of the culture. But like we've lost most of those songs and stuff. But like what Trent's mob and Tim, I don't know about yours as well, but it's to recreate like kind of new songs about burning and stuff that now they use. So I don't know if you guys want to elaborate a little bit on that. Would be great too.
Well, I think just to intervene real quick,
Yeah, no
I think if it's my understanding is that a lot of Indigenous communities and cultures don't have a written history the way that Western cultures do, which is something I think is good to explain to people, right? Because I think, at least from my understanding, that, I mean, you can look back and you can see what Napoleon did, or you can see what happened, and there's written history, right? Whereas my understanding is a lot of Indigenous communities, it was a vocal history, which is why it would be lost through generations of non-practice. Is that correct, or am I?
No, yeah.
Yeah, look, I suppose for our people, I mean, we always look back through research documents and records, of colonialists, on our country and settlers documenting things, because they're always good to broaden, I suppose, our knowledge of things that happened in the past. But a lot of the stuff we carry in our hearts, and there are things that, that our cultural protocols and our cultures passed down through our families, through our old people. And Tim touched on an important thing, I think, in that discussion then, is around, him talking with his uncle around this. And that's the thing we've got to bring back into it. And he mentioned, cultural governance. That's a very important thing with our people, because our social structures over a long period of time, like our confidence has been broken, but there's also, it's actually affected our social, our cultural governance in how things are managed. So, we as people want to bring back our culture and learn it and recreate it in a modern sense. We need to look at our cultural governance, and that's a thing that especially with our mob, and I know Tim's mob does as well. It's about that. It's about bringing our elders back and talking to our elders in what they say, and that's one thing that we do before we do our burns. Is we make sure our elders go to these areas that we're burning, and they talk about these areas, and whether they've got knowledge over that area or not, we still ask their permission. And they're things I think today, in a modern sense, we don't do that. We don't do that with our families. We don't go and talk to our old people enough, brothers and sisters, and go, look, this is what we're going to do, and sit down and have a yarn about it. We just go and do it, and that's it.
Exactly. When I talk about loss, I say, yes, things have been lost. I mean, 38 languages in the state of Victoria. I think there's only 2 that can be fluently spoken nowadays. So yes, things have been lost, but I guess the kind of angle I was coming at with that is that as Aboriginal people, it's still there inside you, And so, just touching again on Trent's point, what we've been able to do, and Matt, you asked the right question. Yes, our knowledge and our systems and our traditions were all passed down orally. So we're oral people. A lot of our knowledge was passed down through ceremony, song and dance, and art, etc. But when we were colonized, fortunately, I say this in inverted commas, was that the explorers, the so-called explorers, had documented every day. And so there's a lot of literature out there that we can draw on and combine with the feeling, but also the spiritual and the essence of just being an Aboriginal person in the 21st century. So we gather a lot of that knowledge and we go back to country, and we will recreate what is necessary and what is real and what is meaningful for us as Aboriginal peoples here in the 21st century. And obviously it's based on feeling for us, and if it feels right, both within your heart and within your spirit, then we continue that. And you know when it doesn't feel right, because ultimately the ancestors are going to come down and say something to you, and that could be in the shape of a tiger snake, or it could be in the shape of a big thunderstorm. You don't know, but you just got to be ready and connected into that, so that those are the messages that are coming from you. But yeah, we have to do it. We have to take ownership, and that's the kind of angle I was talking on when I was thinking about nothing's been lost, because it's still, as Aboriginal people, it's still there. And just if you don't mind, one of the debates I had with an archaeologist some time ago was around this mob had gone and scarred a tree, and they made a deadly canoe out of it. And deadly for us is good in Aboriginal slang.
Not a canoe that sunk.
They made a good canoe out of it, and ultimately what they did is scar that tree. And I said to the archaeologist, okay, so how are you going to protect that tree? How are you going to look after it from a Aboriginal cultural heritage protection point of view? And they said, well, we're not going to protect that tree. I say, why not? And they said, well, that's contemporary. I said, that's not contemporary, that's culture. I said, our culture doesn't remain static, and we evolve. I mean, as the world has evolved, so too have we. So any tool that we've got available, anything that we've got available to utilize and practice our culture, and that is exactly the same in the way in which we did it since prior to colonization.
Yeah, great point. We've seen over here, like, even we're having some pipeline hearings. I don't know if you've heard about that, but we won't get into it. But there's basically some Indigenous nations standing up to it. But one thing that I recently heard in one of the proceedings was that they told an elder that his knowledge that he was sharing wasn't old enough, so it didn't qualify as like traditional ecological knowledge.
Who said that?
This at the pipeline hearing, one of the lawyers. Yeah,
the lawyers, so like a non-traditional or
a non-indigenous person. Yeah, said like, you're not talking back far enough, so that doesn't apply here. Whereas I think that's the important thing, is that we're still here, and because we're here, our knowledge is here too. And so, Tim, I just wanted to mention the other thing you were talking about was confidence in burning. So the one thing I'm finding in Canada, like when I go and speak to the elders and some of the knowledge holders, there is like almost a fear of kind of going back on the land and burning, because I think once you like have it hammered into your brain enough, that if you start a fire like in Canada, you're going to get like jailed or fined or something, and then suddenly now we've got the agencies, and people like me saying, oh, it's good to burn now.
Yeah.
Like, how you kind of get over that dichotomy that we've forced into our people, that their knowledge wasn't valid. And now you've probably seen all these articles that are coming out now from, non-Indigenous researchers, like, we need to put mosaics back on the landscape and all this. And it's like, we've been trying to tell you guys that for basically since you colonized us.
Yeah. Well, the Western society is only just catching up. Like, our knowledge, the Western scientific knowledge is only just catching up now. Is fascinating, but there's still a holdback from, from that perspective to trust in Indigenous knowledge, which is so frustrating, right? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's interesting,
it is.
because when I think about it, if you think about it in this context, right, our practices were so scientifically astute, it's actually uncomprehendable, to be honest. Our systems were so complex that I think the smartest academic scholar will be scratching their head about how the hell we did such things.
Right.
But I think for me, it's interesting because what we did was care for the land with the most minimal impact possible, because the land, the earth, was our mother. We had to care and protect it, her, him, and it had to be done in a way that if we did harm the earth and the land, ultimately that meant that we would be tribally punished. You know what I mean? We would breach our tribal protocols and laws. And so it astounds me that how did we manage land? How did we manage fire in particular? Or how do we utilize these things? Or how didn't we, rather? Because it's clear to me we've been here for 60,000 plus years, and you have to have some sort of scientific knowledge and understanding of how to rejuvenate and care for biodiversity, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, I find it interesting, that one.
Yeah, and otherwise, our ancestors wouldn't have lived, right?
Yeah.
Like
The circumstances of screwing up, a burn was
our death.
Yeah, it was. Oh, now we don't have any food within like a livable radius, and we're all going to die. So it's. I think we talked about this in the introductory podcast, where I kind of had a aha moment where thinking about like the similarities between Western scientific knowledge and traditional indigenous knowledge, and how really, even though like the indigenous knowledge has gone through the scientific process in its own way, right? I mean, the idea of trying something scientifically and then trying it again, and you keep challenging that idea until it either fails the hypothesis or succeeds in the hypothesis, right? Mm-hmm. And indigenous people did that intuitively, because if you screwed up, it didn't make it through to the next turn, right? So it was really its own scientific process in its own. It just wasn't written down, and there wasn't, you know what I mean? It wasn't the official methodology, but it was done over generations and generations in its own way. Because if it didn't work, it wasn't going to keep going. So obviously, there was science going on. Yeah. It just isn't science the way that Western culture recognizes it.
Yeah, and I think that one of the coolest things too about hanging out with Trent and Tim was, for me as well, just being able to speak about our cultures and just how similar they are. Like, even though we're from different continents and our ancestors were, there's those things about the earth is your mother, right? Like that is just universal amongst indigenous people, and that you manage the land as a steward of the land. That's just, again, something that you see worldwide. That's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I think fire isn't I suppose hasn't been treated with enough respect. Fire, obviously, with our people, it's a tool. But it's also something that provides us life, and I think fire for so many long period of time has been used as a threat, or it's been scared to be used, or but our people hold fire as sacred. It's sacred with us, and it's like I went to up to Queensland a couple of years ago, and I burnt with mob up there, and like they had grass that was taller than myself, and we walking through those areas that little kids had lighting matches everywhere, and their parents, their dads, is going, yeah, go and go light there, and I looked, and where we are down here in Victoria is very regulated in terms of fire management in some areas. And, I'm thinking, that's it right there. It's having that chance to be out there doing that with your family and practicing that. And that's holding that flame inside your heart. That's something with our people, we're always willing with, people, biodiversity, scientists, we'll always take them out on country and show them the truth that's there, because they won't get it inside of an office or inside of a lecture theatre. As much as you can put up as a million PowerPoints to try and get your point across. The only way we get our point across is taking people out on country and showing what's right there, on the landscape, and showing our old people's footprints. That's the only way it sort of gets across, that I find here. But what I try and do is, there's the people that have the Western science, the Western, I suppose, knowledge, is to try and blend almost the two as well, because we as a people, we want to share this country. We always say we don't own it, but we look after it. We're managers. Our Mother Earth owns this country, and we manage it. We look after it. We're just custodians.
And we're certainly getting there.
Trent, that's it, brother.
We're in the space, and I'll say that Jaja in particular, your mob have been leading the state when it comes to having a partnership with the government to do that. And when I think about my uncle, he said to me, yeah, we want to burn, and we want to partner with the government and to be able to do it, and the right authorities to be able to do it. But he said it's taken some time. It's taken a few years to just get to a level of understanding between both groups. In particular, if I think there was one opportunity where we put fire on the landscape, and the agencies come out with every piece of machinery necessary to suppress the fire if it was needed.
Yeah.
And then the mob were like, well, what's going on here? We're just starting a little cool burn fire, you know. So he said it took some time to get to a point where now the agencies only bring a couple of slip-ons,
Yeah,
which Trent will
that's
be
it.
able to explain more, which
Yeah,
means, okay, we're here, we're part of this process now. We don't need all this machinery, but we kind of come to a level of understanding that this is what we need to kind of move forward at this point. And
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
one other point I would say is we've just gone through a state government election, and we had a government return, and ultimately one of their commitments was to achieve treaty with the Victorian Aboriginal community. As well as that, they're very much committed to Aboriginal self-determination. So we're in this new paradigm when it comes to relationship between government agencies and Aboriginal communities. And that will mean ultimately over time, if we get it right, that the mob, uh, Aboriginal peoples, will be able to be making key decisions about the way in which countries manage, etc. So we're in a
Awesome.
good space. I think we're going to be able to take some really good steps forward when it comes to meaningfully partnering and generally engaging both Aboriginal peoples and state government.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
can I ask you a question on that? So, you guys in Australia with your cultural burning to me are world leading. So like when there's some researchers and other things who are doing great work too, but in terms of actually, getting fire back and having your cultural burn workshops and stuff, like you guys in Australia are the ones who are actually doing things. So I'm just wondering, what do you have any thoughts about, why it's Australia that's leading this way? Is it because of that relationship between your government and your mobs, or is it just like the strength and maybe
Yeah.
determination of you guys to get fire back on the ground?
I think from it, Amy, I suppose like Tim touched on his mob's, native title determination, but I think with us, with Jadarung here in Central Victoria, so back in 2013, we actually entered into a recognition settlement agreement with the state government. So that's another form of, I suppose, separate to native title, but it's basically a process that is a little bit less intrusive into agreeing. So it's more of a settlement. It's more of an agreement.
It's an
So
out of
we
court settlement. It's an out of
exactly
court
that's
settlement.
right, out of court. So we settled. It took us over 10 years to work through that process. Though it was a long process. But what we've come out of that is that we've got we call it an RSA, a recognition settlement agreement area. Basically, that states us as the first peoples of this area of this country in this boundary that we work within. And we acknowledge it's not our traditional boundary, but it's our boundary that we have agreed upon with our neighbours, with the other clan groups. From that gives us basically a settlement determination that the state creates us as partners. We're not another stakeholder group. We're actually partners with the state government. And that puts a bit of ownership on the state government to step up to the plate, basically, and support us as First Peoples in basically all of our self-determination and rights as people on this country. From that, I think what's happened is so in our fire department in our area, so in Loddon Mallee, with DELP, with Forest Fire Management. So Scott Falconer, that was with me over there, that we met, Amy. He, I think, was crucial in us bringing back Dunduk Wee on our country because now he's a non-Aboriginal person, but he's an assistant chief fire officer in our region for DELP, and his role is really crucial in terms of fire management and land management. And he actually, I think, out of his role, put himself probably in the firing line, but he actually set the way forward in terms of supporting us to do fire on our country. And he's a fellow I've got a lot of respect for, because he talks the talk. We get a lot of government agencies that come in, or people in positions that want to support us, and they see the good in things, but they can't follow through for whatever reason. Scott's different to that, and Scott actually followed through, and he continues to do so. And we supported him as Judgerung people because we knew, he spoke the truth and that he would bat for us, basically, to get us out on country burning again. And that's how it's, I suppose, started the process with around this, because beforehand it was just a conversation that we were having, trying to get out and burn. And Scott said, well, yeah, there's no reason we can't. We'll implement it in normal process and have you guys burning. And he, obviously we went over to the States with him because he's doing the Winston Churchill Fellowship, and he's created a report that basically myself and Tim are in as well, sharing his learnings on that journey. And I think that's crucial, because that's actually having people in an agency, in a high role, manager role, that can make influence in government. That's what needs to happen to support Aboriginal people, to share our vision and to push our vision, basically, because I know for Judgerung, we can't do it all ourselves. We don't have the capacity in all of our mob. We need other government agencies to take, as I said, our country plan and understand our country plan and talk the talk with us, not for us. And that's what gets confused. People want to talk for us, not with us. And, Scott's really, he's really impressed our mob and our elders. And, we call him a brother because, what he's done and what he's done in his heart. And that's probably for us is how it's moved forward and progressed, I guess, honestly.
Yeah, and I think Scott would certainly, Scott has this line, and he says, you got to do the right thing before you get everything right. And he doesn't say that flippantly either. He genuinely means it. And ultimately I think what Trent was saying is absolutely right. If you've got somebody who's in a system who knows it, who knows how to kind of talk the right language and drive the right message in the system, that's critically important. And obviously, and it's needed. And Scott certainly is one of the champions that, I've come to know Scott over the last year or so, just as a colleague, but now a friend. But ultimately I met Scott and even caught up with Trent probably for one of the first times on Jar Jar country when they come to celebrating Jandakwi with the minister. That was kind of one of the first times I caught up with him there. And I kind of like what was going on there, so we're going to make this happen. Nah. But what the work that that's been driven out of Trent's country, and with Scott at the helm there, we've gone ahead as a department and worked with traditional owners to build what we call a traditional owner cultural burning strategy. And we're not able to talk about the specifics of it because ultimately it's about cultural knowledge and practice and intellectual property. But we've given the ability for traditional owners across the state to build and write this strategy. And ultimately, the strategy will then be launched by the department. And in my mind, the strategy is about enabling traditional owner groups and the agencies to be able to work with one another and talk with each other, not talk for us, as Trent was saying, to be able to put fire into landscape in the way in which each group respectively wants to be able to do it. And so we're not far from launching that strategy, which is going to be good.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And obviously it'll enable and support what's going on down on Trent's country, but also it'll be able to get some of those mobs who are wanting to burn on country to start the process as well.
Yeah, I
But I
think one of
think
the
when you talk, just quickly, when you talk about seeing Australia as a leader in this space, I think Trent really touched on it about native title and traditional settlement. But that's primarily in the context of Victoria. You've also got, areas up in the Kimberley, which is Western Australia. You've got areas up in Kakadu and in Arnhem Land, which they are kind of like Aboriginal controlled lands. So ultimately, in those spaces, fire is going to be put in the landscape. Doesn't matter what, because it's practically Aboriginal controlled land, Aboriginal to a degree governed lands.
Sweet, yeah. I mean, the one thing as an outsider looking in at you guys, I think, and shout out to Scott too. Like, for me with Scott, it's like what I see sometimes with agencies is they want to kind of take the knowledge that we have and kind of eliminate us from the equation. Like, it's kind of like more of a power thing, right? Where they're the experts in burning. But what I found with Scott,
experts in quotations,
experts, yeah. But what I found with Scott is that he really values you guys, and he's not interested in that power grab in a way, so he's kind of happy to take a back seat, which I think, I would encourage other managers, that want to work with Indigenous people as well, like you said, to act as supports for that, instead of, trying to control the whole situation.
Yeah.
I had one final question for either one of you or both of you. And it was I guess it would be for Trent actually. In the last 3 years, since you guys have actually brought burning back onto the landscape, what has that done to restore the community?
Oh, look, touching on that, I think in terms of building our capacity with our community, Judgerung people, we have a lot of people that don't live on country. They might live an hour, 2 away, 3 away. They might live in Melbourne, in capital city, in Victoria here. But what it's actually done is build up our capacity. So we've had, just recently, need to note too that all of our people burning, we actually get them to go through the general firefighter training. So it gives them opportunity that they can actually step into a project firefighter role through the season as a seasonal firefighter and take on a role in that area. So we've been able to create more capacity with our young people, women and men, to do those roles and step up. But what it's actually done is we've been able to have elders out on country again that have stepped foot back, I suppose, on country for the first time. That's something actually I never actually envisaged when I actually started to wanting to do cultural burning. I'd never had it in my mind, but it's actually happened. And the fact is, when we're having meetings about burning and what we're going to do and where we want to burn, we're actually asking the family groups. So Judgerung has 18 different family groups that have different areas of country that they connect to through their clan areas. And what we do, when we first started, we were having meetings and we had 5 to 10 people turn up. Now we're getting meetings of 50 to 60 people to turn up with elders, young kids.
That's awesome.
And that's actually seeing it there. That's what the end game is, because people are seeing the passion in what we're doing. We're giving people the right to come out with us and burn on country. And it's about that whole experience, like we do. I know in my main role is, I have a firefighting role, and, we do a planned burn. Now, Tim touched on it before around vehicle, equipment we use, and it's called a slip-on unit, and it's basically a water tank on the back of a Toyota Land Cruiser that we use, to go to wildfires, to planned burns, whatever. And we have our fire tankers. Now, when we do our planned burns, we might have 20 to 30 slip-on units driving up and down a track and around a burn all day, and tankers. and there might be 30 staff on drip torches, lighting the bush up. But when we do our planned burns, we might have one slip-on unit there, maybe a tanker if it's depending on the weather that's coming in later in the day. But, we'll have 30 odd people standing around, talking and yarning and sitting around a fire at the start of the day. People are more relaxed. They're more comfortable. We're burning in a cooler environment. We're burning when the weather's right. We're burning in a more positive way. Not to say that our cultural burning needs to take away from the planned burning, the prescribed burning. There's still a need for both. They can both gel together and work together as well, which is we always, I try and push that people understand that we need both. But it just creates more of a positive and safer environment for our people. And they're the impacts I've seen in our people. They're standing up and they're taking on fire roles. They're bringing me and they're going, look, I want to apply for this job. I'm going, yeah, I'll support you. I'll be a referee for you. And, they're getting a role and they're seeing that what's happening now, they're actually providing for their family. They're not on benefits. They're actually turning up to work 5 days a week. They're getting skills. They're stepping up in their roles and actually being leaders. And that's a positive effect because it's positive in the younger kids coming up, seeing what their parents or their aunties and uncles are doing. And that's, for me, that's the end game. That's what it is.
That's awesome. Tim, do you have anything that you want to add?
Sorry, I just got distracted because Willan, which is the yellow-tailed black cockatoo, just sung out the background there, which is our tribe's
Oh,
totem.
wow.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's a sign. It's your ancestors.
That's it. So the question was around what it's done for our mob. I mean, ultimately, similar to what Trent is saying, it's about getting fire is the tool, to get our mob back to country and get our mob caring for the country and implementing our cultural practices. Fire, will do a lot of things for our mob. If you're not aware, we actually now, in terms of what we call our Budget Bin cultural landscape, we've got an application in with UNESCO World Heritage to have that landscape put onto that register.
Nice.
And in 2019, we hopefully will get good news that it will be put on the register. And as far as I understand it, it will be it'll be on the register for its cultural values only. So for us, fire has a role to play in that because some time ago, it was about a few years ago, we had a hot wildfire go through the landscape. And what that did, after we were able to go into areas of which were too much vegetation because we weren't able to get in there. So when the fire went through there, we could access it. And we were then able to uncover or find a new stone hut, which was around 4 by 4 meters.
Huh.
And we never knew this hut was there until the fire had gone through.
Wow.
And all of our stone huts that we had documented and registered, they were only about 1.5 meters in size and width. And so for us, that hut obviously has some important cultural significance. But ultimately, with the unearthing of that cultural site through fire, and that's primarily what we want to use fire for now, is to put it into the landscape to be able to find more cultural sites that we just didn't know were there. And we obviously would be using that stone hut and all those other things in the landscape to put into the application of UNESCO's, etc. So, I mean, for me, that's the kind of add-on to what Trent was saying. It has much larger benefits in terms of, one, our communities back in the landscape, being healthy, being vibrant, implementing their cultural practices. But then it's also about the world knowing who we are as Kirimara people on the Nijmara Nation.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, it was perfect, guys. I want to thank you very much for coming on and speaking to us about all this. I definitely, opened my eyes a lot.
Yeah. Hi,
No worries, man.
as we say over here. You guys are the best.
Glad we could get
as
Trent in
usual.
from the bush.
That's it, brother.
I
Sorry
know.
out there.
Thanks a lot for listening, guys. I know Amy and I both really enjoy these conversations. They're always incredible. Thanks so much to Trent and Tim for coming on. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. This podcast was produced by me, Matthew Kristoff, and I have an environmental sciences podcast called Your Forest. And if you like good fire, you'll definitely like Your Forest. Please check it out on Apple, Google, Spotify, and Stitcher. And I hope you guys like it. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks a lot for listening. Take it easy.